Welcome back to the Dallas Prospect. I am DDP. And you know what? I've been away for too long. Far too long. Call me Shawn Michaels because after the disastrous Luka Doncic trade, I lost my sports smile. And you know what? I'm still not sure that it's fully back, but I've had a little bit of time to process and move forward. And so we're working our way back into this resurrection of the Dallas Prospect channel here. Now, I'm not filming just yet in the studio space, nor do I have my new co-host Isaiah with me here, but that will be coming very soon. We're putting the finishing touches on our studio space, so that's going to be very exciting. In the meantime, because the season is here, because some things are happening, I wanted to jump in and talk a little bit of Mavericks basketball. Just letting you know, whole new facelift, whole new era of Dallas Prospect is fast approaching. So let's talk a little bit about the new era and fresh growing pains for these Dallas Mavericks. Oofa, well, they're 1-3 to begin the season here. And until this past game against Oklahoma City, in which they nearly stage a staggering fourth quarter comeback down 22 points. Until that moment, I really was tearing my hair out wondering what they could have possibly been thinking with this current configuration of talents, because they have a lot of bigs and they have a lot of interesting pieces, but not necessarily pieces that fit seamlessly together. There's a painful irony in the fact that they seem to be looking for a point guard, and it's like, well, you drafted Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic in the same draft, and one of those, weren't gonna have a say in. The other one, you very clearly made a decision that broke a lot of people. But we've been running this experiment here using Cooper Flagg as our primary, and look, the kid's got a lot of fascinating aspects to his game. His defensive presence and versatility, his passing, but it's sort of secondary playmaking in that sort of way. I'm not sure that the way that they're utilizing him necessarily places him in position for his greatest strengths. So it feels interesting to say that on one hand, you have a guy who is, depending on which betting market you're looking at, the favorite for Rookie of the Year, and yet you aren't really utilizing him properly. And at the same time, you got a lot of guys that, for your guards and wings, that you don't have a lot of guys that can create themselves. Now, D'Lo, he's able to do that a bit, but I've always had a mixed feelings with D'Angelo Russell. He can give you some nice points, but I've never felt like he was a real option if you were a contending team. If you were going to have him, place him at the top of any of your key pieces or even your backup point guard once Kyrie is back. I just have reservations about that, and it's been very up and down. The rest of the Mavericks guards and wings, they can't create for themselves. So you got guys that can shoot threes, be a little bit 3-and-D. Maybe they can slash just a little bit, but not the configuration of a roster that looks strong. And I think that's why through at least the first 3 games here, they were so abysmal in their offensive rating, like a little over 95 points per 100 possessions, which I pretty much was the basement at that point among teams. Defensively, yeah, there's no doubt this team is defensively stacked, but how is it all going to fit together? Because until they got their one win of the season thus far against the Toronto Raptors, they hadn't even led in the second half of a game. So through their first 2 games, they didn't even have a second half lead. Now, obviously, they end up getting a 10-point win against Toronto. Cooper Flagg flashes with 22 points and gave you a really good, complete performance there. Showed a little bit of everything of what he can do. But the reservations abounded for this team because I'm still just not convinced that the way this team is built doesn't need pretty substantial intervention. I still feel like this team is, on paper, might sound interesting. There's a lot of noteworthy names, but the way the pieces fit together don't necessarily complement one another. And I think that's going to force Dallas to ultimately make some kind of adjustment or acquisition during the trade deadline. Because the reality is, even though they staged that 22-point comeback against Oklahoma City and nearly pull it off, they're still going to have an uphill battle. Some people were saying like, oh, well, ESPN not placing them as a playoff team in their projections, like, oh, that's disrespectful. And I was like, I honestly don't know that it is, because this team, Anthony Davis, yes, is still a very good two-way player. He's a solid number 2 option. He's not that guy anymore. And he's a guy that's going to miss considerable time. We know this. We've seen this through recent years of his career. Now you're also dealing with the first Cooper Flagg injury, that being a shoulder strain. So, he had 2 points against OKC. What was it, 1 of 9 shooting in that game? I'm going to say shoulder strain. All right, I'm going to be understandable. But he played 31 minutes and had a real dud of a game, a -20 overall on his net rating. So a lot of things that you have to address there. And it's like, do you really necessarily feel like, okay, well, Kyrie, the number 1 option, is going to come back? He's coming back, age 33, 34, off of a torn ACL. There's nothing in that just outright signals that, like, yes, it'll be the Kyrie of old. He's not ahead of schedule. He's still on schedule, far as we know. But I just have reservations about that kind of workload, because it was that workload between the Luka injury and his considerable time he missed last season, combined within the trade and having nothing else to do offensively. That workload and strain is what took Kyrie out. So that was one of those things where you kind of gave yourself the poison pill. And now you're like, okay, cool, he's coming back. As my voice cracks, I'm recovering from a little bit of a bug the last couple days. As he's coming back, and now it's like, okay, great, we're going to put this same pressure on him and just hope for the best. I don't know that I feel that confident about that. Yes, with AD, he's going to have a little bit of help there. He's not going to have to shoulder all of that weight. But again, it's going to depend on that availability and Cooper Flagg as he continues to emerge. To me, this Dallas team, they're going to have to make some adjustments. They're going to be interesting defensively. Defensively, very versatile. I like that. Offensively, I still have real reservations, because Jason Kidd is not an offensive savant. He never has been. The whole thing, as a coach, I should say, as a coach, Jason Kidd has always been like, I'm going to get my superstars and basically just say, go get me a bucket. Whether you make it or whether you set up one of your guys, you go make it happen. That would always be Luka or Kyrie. Now Luka's gone. Kyrie's coming back from an ACL. I have reservations. But in this overall performance for the Mavericks, I'm really looking at how I envision them moving forward, because Anthony Davis, I'm looking at his stats thus far: 22 points, 13 boards, and a block in that first game against San Antonio. 27-13 and 2, 25-10 and 2, 26-11 and 1. That all sounds great. Like, it's still a nice compliment. I just don't view him as a top level number 2 option. You had a 1 and a 1A, and you basically are saying we'd rather go with a 1 and a 2, but that 2 having two-way ability. I get it, but I still disagree with it. So Anthony Davis, I see what he's bringing to the table. I know he's trying to, kind of let Cooper Flagg do his thing a little bit and give him room to grow and to mature into this role. But I still have reservations, because this team looks like it's just missing a true number 1 option right now. And that'll come with time and maybe Kyrie coming back from injury. But we're going to have to see where this team feels like it's at. In the meantime, I'm just going to say, even with the time that's passed, my reservations have not changed. I am still 100% camp fire Nico Harrison, but that is what it is. Yeah, so the Mavericks in that fourth quarter staged a 25-4 run against the Thunder that cut the lead to 1 point, which is pretty incredible. Like, really is, because they looked dead in the water. You get that Hartenstein backdoor cut, reverse jam on the baseline that pushes it to 22, and it's just like, oof, I don't know, man. That feels like a nail in the coffin, and they just came out swinging after that, and it really turned the tide of that fourth quarter. And it was really the first time I felt like the AAC in this, again, new kind of era was just rocking for the Mavericks. Like, all the apprehension, like they were feeding off it. It was a very loud, vocal crowd. It's what you would want your home crowd to be. And I feel like it felt like they looked at everything that's happened the past almost year now, and they said, you know what? This feels like the first real thing to just lose our minds over with this run, because we're playing the defending champions at home. We got this new era. Yeah, our number one guy is not doing great. Our number one pick's not doing great in this game. 1 of 9 for him overall. But still very much an exciting team that can make a run, and the team responded well to it. In the end, they couldn't get over the hump. I understand Jason Kidd's saying, we don't really like or care for moral victories. I agree, for the record. But I like seeing the fight from the Mavericks here. It's a little funny to me that you already have some of these sports outlets like, can they recover to make a playoff run? We're 4 games in, man. It's an 82-game season. We're 4 games in. Yes, they absolutely could make an adjustment and correct things. It's ridiculous to act like this, just like, season over. They're not even at 100%. There's a lot still to be figured out about this team. And, flag being this new era, they're going to have to figure out how to utilize him to his strength. I think Kyrie coming back will help that considerably. But in the meantime, just give the kid room to grow. Give him time. Even Jason Kidd is out there saying, like, the fans are valid in their feelings of expressing, fire Nico Harrison. But at the same time, you kind of give us time. It's a new era. It is what it is. You got to give this thing some time. I agree. And it's not often I agree with the Jason Kidd comment in a post-game or an interview in general. I usually hate the answers he gives to the media. I've been very much so at odds with a lot of Jason Kidd answers in his head coach tenure with the Mavericks. But I will say there is something to be said for the depth of that answer. So I was talking earlier about D'Angelo Russell. In that game, he's able to get you 9 points, 10 assists. I like the creation aspect, honestly. Like, the 10 assist game, not bad. If the 9 points, I think the only reason they don't, I'm like, normally I would say, like, okay, 10 and 10 out of basically your backup point guard thrust into this kind of role. Okay. But where I have my quibbles, I guess, with it is 3 of 14 from the field, 1 of 8 from 3 in 30 minutes of action. So offensively, he wasn't really finding much rhythm there. But I do like that he was still able to create a little bit for some of his guys and to put his teammates in position to succeed. So you take the good with the bad, I guess, but you compare that to the difference of, like, the Thunder's backup point guard here, AJ Mitchell, who, he didn't even play in the postseason really at all for them last year. He was looking like he was going to be a key rotation piece as the regular season wound down, because he was already kind of turning into this guy that we're seeing now. But he suffers a tough injury before the playoffs, misses some time, and when he's finally ready to get back, you're kind of right up against the playoffs, and so they're like, we don't want to mess up the rotation and the rhythm that we've got right now. And so he really has a completely shrunk role for that entire Thunder postseason run. Where he's done this season, 16, 2 and 2 on 6 of 12 in their opener, a double OT win in that. 26, 3 and 4, and another double OT thriller, this one in Indiana. 14, 7 and 7 on 6 of 14. 14, 7 and 7 out of your back point guard. Just good grief, man. And then 17, 7 and 1 on 7 of 15. Dude, this guy, he is a phenomenal backup point guard for this Thunder team. It's a team that, with all their draft picks and all their assets, an embarrassment of riches, to have him and a guy like Cason Wallace also coming off the bench, just those guys developing into what they're developing into, it's absolutely incredible. But AJ Mitchell, man, I saw flashes of him last year, and watching just a tiny bit of preseason this year, I saw him popping off the screen, and I was just like, dude, he looks like he is going to be not just like a part of the rotation. He looks like he's going to be like a potential 6-man candidate. And that early on looks to be the case. Like, his ability to create in that backup point guard role, phenomenal. And when OKC is at full health, assuming that they can stay at full health, man, that's another juggernaut team. There's a reason they're considered a favorite this year, and I can't really argue. Especially when you then pair it with what Chet Holmgren has been in this, continuation of his development. 28-7-2 in their opener, 15-12-2, 31-15-3, 18-11-4 against the Mavericks last night. Just, it really is impressive. And I know a lot of people looked at the deal OKC gave him and they were like, are they insane? This dude missed an entire year of his career, his true rookie year, because of a dislocated ankle. Then he was bedridden for 4 months last year because he broke his hip. And the impact on his hip that he suffered that made him essentially bedridden, they said it was like being in a car crash, the amount of force that he landed on that hip with. But he worked his ass off and he came back for the postseason run, and he was a little bit up and down. But, in the difference, OKC doesn't win Game 7 against Indiana without Chet and his just monster defensive game, the rim protection. I want to say it was 5 or 7 blocks, something crazy like that. Just absolutely incredible. Now, his offensive ceiling is still just something he's starting to scratch. Don't get it twisted. He's not Wemby offensively. Wemby is the unicorn of all unicorns. He is the unicorn wizard, one might say. If you know, you know. But Chet is, I don't even want to say Timu unicorn in that sense. I think Chet is definitely a unicorn. He's not Wemby, but you know what? In a world where there's maybe 2 or 3 of these guys, period, the fact that you've got the second best one, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So with him, availability is always going to be the question, but how he was playing before that hip injury and then how he is starting this year, the impact he made in that finals against Indiana, incredible. Really, truly incredible. When Dallas played them the year before in the second round, I really had reservations about how good I thought he was. I was like, he's an interesting novelty, but I didn't see the transcendence, and it really came about last year before that hip injury. So looking at what he could be in this next year of development makes OKC that much scarier if they've actually got the health to sustain what they're trying to do here. As much OT as they're playing, they're beat up. They got a lot of guys on injury report, including J-Dub, who, if I'm looking at Thunder guys, I think the SGA hate is pretty forced, but if I'm looking at OKC guys and I'm like, that might be my favorite guy on this team right now, I'm looking at J-Dub for sure. And if you remember, that's somebody else I was pretty critical of in the past because of that Mavericks Thunder playoff series. And I was like, oh, watching him with that torn wrist ligament in his shooting hand, no less, drop 40 in the finals, I was like, you know what? I'm happy to eat crow. I did not see him hitting this new gear. I thought he was always going to be a decent number 2 option. And, maybe that's all he ever is, but decent is not the right word. I just mean a number 2 option. But his two-way impact in his offensive game, his ability to take over is so much greater than I gave credit for at the time. So I'm happy to eat that crow for that because he's a lot of fun to watch. And, again, I think the hate for SGA is a bit forced, but if you have SGA hate, I feel like J-Dub comes across as pretty likable as the contrast to that. So it is what it is. Regardless, I enjoy a lot of what this Thunder team has built. And you know what? With that many draft picks, I would certainly hope you can hit on enough of them to be a legitimate perennial contender, if not a champion, which now they are. But that wraps up this very condensed first little snippet video back into the flow here for Dallas Prospect. Again, I will be back soon. I don't know if it's going to be this very next video that I'm back already in the studio, but we are in the process of setting it up. It's possible we're still a week away. But hang tight, we are going to have some really good new stuff coming here for you. But talking not just Dallas Mavericks, but a little bit more broadly with the NBA, talking a little bit of college football even. We're gonna test some things out, and we're gonna have a new studio, a new co-host, and we're gonna make this thing as good as we can make it. So that's my time. Don't forget to like the video, drop a comment below, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, and until next time, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace.